Let's break away from that a little bit and have a separate conversation that takes into account that it is December as well as the holiday season, and lots of people will be traveling, crisscrossing the country, and indeed visiting destinations around the world. Well, what happens in a situation where you have to do that while you are subject to a parenting plan that is part of a separation or a divorce order? These can be complicated matters. Let's bring into the conversation then Thato Mahapa, who is an attorney who will help us make sense of how to navigate these tricky waters. Thato, good evening. Thank you for your time. So as I say, the parenting plans are something that is, I suppose, advisable to do to just ensure that, you know, everyone is clear on what the rights and responsibilities are with regard to a child when parents go their separate ways. But they can be tricky, can they not, when it comes to arrangements around this time of the year?
Parenting, well, thank you for having me, first of all. But parenting plans, if drafted properly, can go a long way in assisting parents who are co-parenting to navigate this particular period of time. Parenting plans that are drafted properly would normally have provision that say, for the specific December holiday period, this is how we are going to handle the transition. You will have access from this date to this date, and I will have access from this date to that date. And I've found that it's easier to have parenting plans that break the holidays so that one can have the full Christmas and New Year period together, and that block alternates year on year, so that you can also avoid having to travel extensively during high peak travel periods. So when drafted properly, yes, they can be very useful.
Yeah, so as you say, I mean, it's ideal to have those kind of firm agreements in terms of alternating and rotating how these holidays will be spent. But you and I know that there's the law and then there's the lived reality, that people are sentimental and suddenly I feel like, you know, this is not working for me and I'd like a different arrangement. Where do conflicts usually arise around this time of year? I'm imagining that as a parent, perhaps, I'm thinking actually this year has been quite difficult and I really would love to spend time with the children over Christmas, but lo and behold, I had them last year and I can't have that benefit again this year.
So, and you're quite correct. Conflicts do pop up, even though there'll be a detailed parenting plan. For example, someone says, well, this year we're having a traditional ceremony in respect of either the child or one of the parents or a grandparent. And it just so happens that you had the children the year before. The cardinal rule with parenting plans is this: no parenting plan, however exceptionally well written it is, will ever replace the need for two parents to co-parent their children. Ultimately, the responsibility falls on the parents to be reasonable and to accommodate each other as much as is possible. Parenting plans will never replace the role that is played by the parents in that kind of situation. No one ever sets out to say, one day when I grow up, I want to co-parent. It's a reality that people have to live with. And it's a reality that requires then reasonable, logical, and rational parents that are always able to place the best interests of the children at the forefront of all the decisions they take. So you're quite right. The mere existence of a parenting plan is not itself going to make sure that there are no situations that prevail, but ultimately it is the parents that need to have some sense of logic in the case. And if all else fails, I mean, you know, the courts can intervene, but we don't want the courts to intervene on such matters.
Talk to me about the complexity of traveling with children whose parenting situation is subject to a co-parenting plan. How tricky does it get depending on whether you're traveling domestically or even trying to travel internationally? What are some of the checklists around that?
The funnier thing is that it is easier actually when you're traveling internationally, because when they're traveling internationally, you would have had to provide consent for the travel in advance. Travel dates would have been finalized and coordinated well in advance, and the conversations around how you're going to adjust around the time frames that exist in the parenting plans, those conversations would have happened well in advance. So it's the domestic travel that often becomes a problem, because there's always this assumption that we're just going here and we'll be back within we'll be back on time. I mean, I've had one instance where a parent called me on the 28th of December because they suddenly found out that their child could not do an unaccompanied flight as a minor because it was now time to switch between the parents, and that created a bit of a problem itself, in that you then had a parent had to incur the extra cost of flying up to Joburg with the child, do the swap with the parent, and then fly back onto holiday and continue their holiday plans with the rest of the family that side. So it can be tricky, and it's the domestic travel that normally brings up a problem. And it's things that in a lot of situations, there's a claim that they're unforeseen, but in reality, they were, and they should have been foreseen. It's generally stuff like family gatherings, family events, traditional ceremonies, and stuff like that. Or a significant family member falls ill at that time, and there's a preference or a request to have the child present. So it's things like that with a little sanity and logic in place, they should be able to navigate those waters.
All right, Thato, thank you for getting us thinking about these matters, because not everyone is keeping their eyes on the ANC's elective conference, and people are making their holiday plans, and these matters are real matters. My big takeout from there is the importance of, over and above the written and agreed parenting plan, for people to just cooperate as co-parents, because that will serve you well under this time during these arrangements.